Hello and welcome to the home of the Ghost Owl as we continue our faction-focused deep dive into the Dwarven mountain holds. We're on part 2 of the characters. We covered the King and the Thane last time, and now we're going to take a look at some of that rune magic. So first up is the Anvil of Doom. So the Anvil of Doom there, interesting unit, good weapon skill, attacks, leadership, and the Forge Father, and then good toughness and wounds for the Anvil itself. Low movement and initiative. It is a war machine in terms of troop type, but it's a war machine character, and doesn't have an allocated base size. You can see an example of an Anvil of Doom on the right hand side there. So equipment wise, coming with hand weapons, heavy armor and shield, which giving you that 4+ armor save, and can take 100 points of weapon, armor, and talismanic runes. So, Anvil of Doom then. So, special rules-wise, Ancestral Shield. So, Anvil of Doom, Forge Father, and Anvil Guard have a 5+ ward save. So that's really nice, but and really important when you come to the last special rule. You get the Gromril armor, which is the re-rolling the armor saves, which is good. The Gromril weapons, they're taking hand weapons anyway, which is AP of -1. You've got your normal hatred for orcs and goblins. Immune to psychology, which is good. So automatically passes fear, panic, and terror tests, but cannot flee as a charge reaction. Well, that's not really going to apply to this unit anyway. It's got a magic resistance of -3, which is absolutely amazing, and the highest magic resistance of any of the Dwarven units. So making it much harder to target this with a spell. Again, really important based on that last special rule here. Resolute doesn't really apply. Rune Law, which is, as we saw in the first part of the faction focus, where we looked at some of the faction rules. So Rune Law here, Wizardly Dispel, and because it's the Anvil of Doom, it does get Dispel as a level 3 wizard, which is quite nice. It may adopt Skirmish Formation, which is quite interesting because it doesn't move. Unbreakable, so units with this rule do not take a break test and give ground instead, which is also interesting because the last rule is Immovable Object. So once the Anvil of Doom has been placed on the battlefield during deployment, it cannot be moved by its crew. So where you place it is where it's going to be. So placement is going to be critical. Now, it also has the ability, which is Strike the Runes, which essentially is a bunch of bound spells. So, an Anvil of Doom can cast the following bound spells with a power level of 3. So, essentially, you are getting a bit of magic here, rune magic, in the Dwarven army, and a power level of 3, that is your basic Wizard Lord. So, Rune of Oath and Steel. It is an enchantment. Casting value is 7+ and 11+, and the range is 24 inches. So effective if cast with a 7+, target friendly unit may re-roll failed armor saves, which is really nice. So if cast with 11+, target friendly unit may re-roll failed armor saves and improve its armor value by 1 to a maximum of 2+. So you think of putting this on something like Iron Breakers, that would make them incredibly durable. So they're already probably the most durable infantry unit on the table, but it means you can also target other units as well. So there's units like hammerers, which don't quite have the same durability as things like Longbeards and Ironbreakers. Improving that hammerer durability could be quite nice. So, and actually a really nice bound spell with a decent range there. Rune of Hearth and Home, that's also an enchantment, has a casting value of 7+ and a range of self. So its effect until your next start of turn subphase, all friendly dwarf units within 21 inches of the Anvil of Doom gain the immune to psychology rule. This is an interesting one. I mean, there's going to be times when having that immune to psychology is nice. You can't flee as a charge reaction, though generally with dwarves and their low movement, you're not going to want to do that too much. So it can be really nice, particularly when you're facing, armies that do have lots of fear and terror and things in there. So having that immune to psychology can be nice, but I think is much more situational than Rune of Oath and Steel, which would be more like a go-to. Okay, you've also got the Rune of Haste and Urgency. This is a conveyance spell. It's got a casting value of 10 plus, so reasonably high, for a 24-inch range. Now, effect, if the target friendly unit is not fleeing and has already moved this turn, it may immediately move again. This is really nice. It's got a high casting value, which is the downside, but it is really nice in terms of Dwarven units lack mobility, right? They have a 3-inch move across the board. That is really low. So the ability to get them moving again can really surprise an opponent who's, seeing this army that's kind of trudging really slow towards them. Before you know it, a unit's been able to double move and can catch the unwary enemy out. So not bad, but not that easy to cast. Next up is Rune of Wrath and Ruin. This is a magic missile, so this is the damage spell that you get from it. It's casting value of 9. It's got a 27-inch range, which is pretty reasonable. Bear in mind this anvil cannot move, so where you place it, you've got a 27-inch radius from around this unit. So you're going to have to place it quite far forward, but you should be able to reach quite close to the middle of the board. With that, depending on the deployment zones and style of deployment zones you're using. And essentially you get to target an enemy unit and they get 2d6 strength 4 AP minus 2 hits. That's really good. When we took a look at the laws of magic, I can't think of many laws of magic that are putting out 2d6 strength 4 and AP minus 2 hits. That's going to do some real damage to a lot of units out there. So a really nice spell, but does have that higher casting value. So one to watch out for. And again, being a level 3, it's nice, but often you're going to start seeing level 4s in enemy armies, which means you're going to be always at a slight disadvantage in getting these off. So something to consider given the cost of the Anvil of Doom. Right, so next up, the Anvil of Doom is a very good choice for the Dwarfs. It provides the only way to get a level 3 Dispel for the army, as well as the only unit that can cast spells at level 3 to boot. So, not bad, basic Wizard Lord. And the bound spells overall seem pretty good. That conveyance is nice, the improvement in durability is nice, and that damage spell is great. But it is the most expensive unit in the entire army list, even against a king with shield bearers, and it is unable to move. So, a smart enemy is able to play around it. They're going to start to learn the ranges of the spells if they don't already know them, and they're going to be able to play around that now. Not for the whole game, but your positioning on this is going to be key. Sphere of Influence is on average a 24-inch radius, so that's, kind of a 48-inch circle on the board. So it's got a pretty sizable range with spells and dispel. However, to ensure the impact in late game, you're going to have to deploy it quite far forward. So there's none of this, deploying it behind the line or anything. So it is going to be vulnerable. It's survivable. It's got toughness 7. It's got 9 wounds. With the Anvil Guard, 4+ armor, 5+ ward save. So it's pretty durable. But you're going to have to put it up there where it's going to be in range of enemy war machines, enemy magic, and so on. Though that magic resistance is going to help. So durable, it's really good, but it's the most expensive unit, and you're going to have to really push it up the board. And when it's up there, it cannot move. So I think it's going to be interesting how really smart opponents deal with this. They'll be able to play in and around that sphere of its influence. Weapon runes I wouldn't consider putting any weapon runes on this. Armor runes, yeah, that could be quite interesting. A rune of fortitude, not too expensive. That +1 toughness, making you tier 8. That could be really nice. That's tier 8 is kind of a really nice place to be. So that's a good one. Talismanic runes, and again, you can take multiple of these. And that is the rune of spell breaking. You can take multiple of, and that is a one-use only auto dispel. So for the old guard out there, this is the old dispel scroll. They were incredibly invaluable in the past, so having the ability to do an auto dispel, dispelling an absolutely critical spell for an enemy army can change the game. You know, they can throw a unit in somewhere expecting to buff it, only for you to dispel it, or they're trying to use a conveyance spell to try and get in behind you or get round a flank, you can automatically dispel it, and that is really, really nice, really strong. So Anvil of Doom, really good, but it is pricey and it is immobile. So the Rune Lord then, good weapon skill, toughness and leadership, low movement, wounds and initiative. That sounds familiar, a bit like the King. So heavy infantry and a 25mm base. He comes with heavy armor though instead of the full plate armor like the King. However, in the options, he can take a great weapon, he can take a shield, and he can take full plate armor. So you can make your Rune Lord get a 3+ armor save. 125 points of weapon, armor, and talismanic runes like a King, and has the ability to take an Oath Stone, though I can't imagine why you'd want an Oath Stone on a Rune Lord. So, special rules. Armor Bane. This is quite nice. So, you know, if you think he's got Gromwell weapons, which he does, which is hand weapons, AP -1. On top of that, he's got Armor Bane, so 6 is to wound. They're going to give him another AP of -1. So he could be attacking at AP -2. He also has what is one of his absolutely critical abilities of why you would want a Rune Lord, which is Forge Fire. So a unit this character joins gains Armor Bane 2 and flaming attacks. The flaming attacks are situational. The Armor Bane 2, 6 is to wound, increasing armor penetration or armor piercing of units by an additional -2 is absolutely great. So that Forge Fire can be really good. And if you're in a unit that's putting out quite a lot of attacks, that could be real interesting. Or you know, a unit of Iron Breakers which don't deal the most damage, they're super durable, but adding this to them could suddenly give them that bit extra punch if they're rolling enough attacks. So that's quite nice. Gromwell armor, so that helps him again if you've got him on a 3+ armor save, which often I would think about taking a full plate and a shield. You know, he's quite an expensive character, so keeping him alive is going to be important. Hatred, Orcs and Goblins. Magic resistance of -2. You know, he's a Rune Lord, so he's going to be a bit more resistant to magic. Not quite as good as the Anvil, but pretty nice. Resolute Rune Lore, so he can do a Wizardly Dispel as a level 2 wizard. And Stubborn as well. So, and again, bearing in mind, thinking about the unit he joins, if he joins a unit that's not stubborn, then he doesn't get to use this rule. Now, with that Rune Lore, the Wizardly Dispel, if you're not taking an Anvil of Doom, I can't imagine not taking a Rune Lord. You're going to need that Dispel. So, I expect to take a Rune Lord in many army lists due to some important buffs to units. So, and he's not a bad stat line, but you know, that Forge Fire, really, really nice, along with that Wizardly Dispel. Preferred role is leading a unit, something like Longbeards, though he will lose the benefit of Stubborn if he does that, or Iron Breakers, because giving them Armor Bane 2 and flaming attacks, and an additional point of magic resistance to help their durability will be great. So that could really amp up Iron Breakers by putting the Rune Lord in there. He's got the ability for a level 2 Dispel, so if you're not taking an Anvil of Doom, you really do need to have a Rune Lord to give you some way of dealing with enemy magic, albeit at a disadvantage, but anything you can do to interrupt the enemy's magic will be important. Still decent in combat, you know, his weapon skill 6, his toughness 5, he's got 3 attacks, the full plate armor and shield, as I said, you know, to get that 3+ armor save, all important. And again, I can't see any occasions where I'd want an Oath Stone for this character in my army on a Rune Lord. I think there are way better choices for that. Weapon runes, well, yeah, you could take the Master Rune of Scalf Blackhammer, always wounds on a 2+, really expensive. Master Rune Strike first. Yeah, I mean, you could take that, and you could take the Rune of Might. Overall, I'm not going to generally be throwing my Rune Lord right up there. So taking really expensive weapon runes, not what I'm looking at. But a Rune of Might, for example, could be really interesting. You know, it's cheap. You can take more than one. Though again, if you're taking 3, as we said before, you might as well take Scalf Blackhammer. But it does mitigate the low strength. He's already got good AP with the Armor Bane, with Forge Fire and the Gromwell weapons. So, you know, adding some strength is probably a good way to go if you're going to put him in that unit of Iron Breakers. You know, he is going to get in combat, so that extra plus strength can just help out with some of that damage dealing. Again, like the King, Rune of Preservation, nice to make him immune to killing blow and multiple wounds. You know, that's a real threat to these multiple wound characters. You know, killing blow and they're gone. Multiple wounds, D3, D6, and they're gone. So having that, and it is pretty cheap. So I really like the Rune of Preservation. And again, Rune of Spellbreaking, like the Anvil of Doom. Again, this automatic dispel going to be pretty crucial. If he's going to be in a unit of something like Iron Breakers or Longbeards, again, he's going to be up the board, he's going to be in combat, so he should be in range of most of the enemy wizards. So Rune Lord, I think really important. Again, if you're not taking an Anvil of Doom, you definitely need a Rune Lord, if not taking both. I just think you need that level 2. Okay, next up then is the Rune Smith. Pretty much, again, as the Thane and the King, the Rune Smith and the Rune Lord, they're pretty much the same. So, but again, 50% cheaper, and you lose weapon skill, toughness, wound, initiative, and an attack for getting it 50% cheaper. All the same equipment options. A reduced amount of weapon armor and talismanic runes, so you've only got 75 points to spend. And again, you can take an Oath Stone. Special rules: Armor Bane 1, Forge Fire. So to get access to Forge Fire, you could have Forge Fire in multiple units with a Rune Lord and a Rune Smith. I think that's a really nice combination. Again, if not taking an Anvil of Doom, you get that extra chance for, you know, you get extra magic resistance, the Rune Lore. With the Wizardly Dispel, though only is a level 1, but does give you a chance to spread out across the board and also give you some redundancy. You know, if you do lose your Rune Lord, at least you can still attempt Wizardly Dispels as a level 1. And I say that Forge Fire, really nice benefit to units. Overall, you're going to take a Runesmith in most or in some army lists. It depends how you're building your army list. You know, the Forge Fire buff is nice. Depends if you're going to take a Rune Lord and how many other points you spend on characters. You know, there's lots of characters. There's engineers you might want. There's the Thane as the battle standard bearer. You've got your Slayers, you know, and you've got your Rune Lord and so on. So you've got to decide how much you're going to spend on characters. You know, are you going to take a Rune Lord and a Runesmith? Maybe you can take 2 Runesmiths. However, I wouldn't recommend that. You know, initially you might go, oh, take 2 Runesmiths. That's great. That's cheap. But like losing the level 2 Dispel, I'd prefer to at least have a chance of disrupting enemy magic. So yeah, leading a role of Longbeards. Again, as with the Rune Lord, it's going to be nice, and the same with the Iron Breakers if you're not taking a Rune Lord. Level 1 Dispel, you know, and again, he's okay in combat. He's not bad. His weapon skill 5, his toughness 4 with 2 attacks, so he's all right. You don't really want to get him in a challenge, though. If he does get challenged, then he could be in for a problem. Full plate armor and shield, though, is nice. Again, getting that 3+ armor save. And again, like the Rune Lord, I can't see any reason why you'd ever want to put an Oath Stone on this guy. Again, no weapon runes. If you're going to take him, to be honest, I'd try and keep him as cheap as possible. Rune of Preservation could be nice. But he doesn't have that many wounds anyway. It's cheap, but again, Rune of Spellbreaking, that would be the one that you'd potentially want to get on. It obviously depends, again, how you're building your army list and what else you've got on there. But having that automatic Dispel, incredibly nice in the army list. And there you go, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of part 2 of the characters, very much focused on Rune Lore. We've got one more part to go where we do an in-depth look at the Dwarven Mountain Hodge characters. So you can imagine we haven't covered Slayers and the Engineer, so that is to come up next. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you found it useful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Let me know why in the comments down below. And as always, if you want to keep seeing more content, hit that subscribe button. Free for you to do. It takes a few seconds for you to do, but it means a huge deal for me. So thank you for that in advance. And thank you to all those that have already subscribed. You've been watching The Ghost Owl. Tune back in as we come to the last part of the characters for the Dwarven Mountain Holds.